Hey everyone, this is Elisa Dixon, and this is Astrology with Elisa, real talk with my Astro Besties. I'm here with Lori and Holly and Irina, and we are going to celebrate Virgo season and all the Virgos in our lives. The sun moved into Virgo, and we all get to be honorary Virgos for the month. So when I think of Virgo energy, I always think of the fact that Mercury rules Virgo. It is a analytical earth sign. It's a mutable sign. So there's that flexibility, adaptability to the sign. It's very earth focused, very grounded, very practical. Virgo comes in a spot of the seasonality where it's going to finish up summer as we move into fall. So as the weather starts changing, that's very much Virgo. There's that changeability piece. And I don't know, what do you guys all think of when you think of Virgo?
So I think of purity, right? That's really what the sign of the Virgin represents: health and wellness, details, analyzers. Those are the things that come to mind with Virgo.
I
And
definitely think analytical. You're right. Analytical for sure.
yeah, analytical was one of the first things that came to my mind. The other thing too that I love is I always think of healers. I was
Mhm.
very much connected with a spiritual approach. There is the access to it. And it's somewhere along the way, there's always that conversations when you think of like celebrities, what zodiac sign would they be? And there's that thought that Jesus might have been a Virgo, that healing energy.
Mm.
It's like the other access of the beautiful Piscean energy, but there's a desire to be of service. There's a desire to be a healer. There's a desire to bring harmony to the world in the sense that things are lined up. I feel like the Virgos notice when things are out of place. It bothers them. Like it wouldn't bother most of us who don't have the Virgo placement. I say us, meaning me. There are Virgo placements in the room here. If the picture's crooked or something's askew, a Virgo really senses it. And I note that towards there being engineering minds and knowing when
Mhm.
things are not in alignment, something's off. I many times akin it to sonar. So you can send out a frequency or a wave and you get a picture back, and bats use it for like echolocation. I feel like the Virgos have this special gift where they're so beautiful earth energy grounded that you think of stomping your foot and this little wave goes out and they get a picture of what's around them. It comes back to them. So something could be out of alignment and it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. Other people wouldn't notice it, but they can literally feel that it's off and they have to change it, which is why sometimes I think they get that label of perfectionism, where
Mhm.
they want to be efficient, they want to be effective, work smarter, not they're hard workers, don't mistake it, but they're working smart and efficient. They're not afraid of working hard, but it's going to be very efficient and smart.
And kind
Yeah.
of on that same note is like the perfectionist, they can also get a bad rap for being critical,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
they can notice things. They can actually be very critical of themselves too.
Mhm.
But it is that attention to the detail that is really stepping up there. Go ahead, Lori. What were you going
Yeah.
to say?
I was going to say exactly that. The perfectionism.
Sorry.
No, it's the truth. Perfectionism equates to a critical nature. Every sign, we've talked about this before, every sign has its light side and its dark side. So that attention to detail, great trait to have. But the criticism can be challenging for themselves because they're harsh self-critics, but it's also difficult for the people around them. I think another thing that I think about related to Virgos is sweetness. They tend to be very gentle and kind, similar to Pisces,
Mm.
and it is on the same axis as Pisces. Another thing is jittery nervousness. The Virgos that I've known tend to have some anxiety, and they also tend to be shy. And I have an example of somebody not being a shy Virgo a little bit later. But for the most part, if there's a very strong Virgo energy, they tend to be a little more shy, a little more introverted. Another thing that I think about with Virgos is, in the natural wheel, we progress from Aries through Virgo on the bottom half of the chart, and then we go Libra to Pisces on the top half of the chart. And one thing to think about with Virgo is this is the culmination of working on the self, working on the self identity. And as we move into Libra and go to Pisces, that's working at the soul level. So Virgo is finalizing the detail of the self and the I am.
Mhm.
That's a really good point. I never really thought about it like that, but especially because another thing that I've learned about Virgo is that they're very much the sign of the mind-body connection. And that kind of goes hand in hand with what you just said about the culmination of working on the self to then move on to the soul on the way to Pisces. So that's really interesting. I never thought about it that way.
We can thank Isabel Hickey for that.
Oh, good. We like
That's from
Isabel Hickey. She wrote a very good book, Cosmic Influences.
Cosmic
called?
Astrology.
I have it right over here.
Astrology, a cosmic science.
That's right. See, you
Yeah.
might think that our teacher taught from this. We all have copies.
Yeah.
It's a very good book. Very good book. And so one other technical piece of Virgo is that it is one of the two signs ruled by Mercury. But a Gemini Mercury is a little different from a Virgo Mercury. Holly, did you have a cool tidbit on that?
Yeah, this is how we think about it, because when you think about Geminis and Virgos, they are completely different in terms of how they operate and what you observe from that. I think of Mercury and Gemini as collecting all the information, collecting. When I think about Mercury and Virgo, it's about sifting, analyzing, taking out the useful pieces, putting it into a process, right? And then being willing to release some of the things that just don't make sense. And in that regard, I tend to find that Virgos make excellent coders. They make excellent QA analysts. They make excellent project coordinators, workforce managers, right? I've been surrounded by all these Virgos in my corporate life and seen them whip out policies and procedures and sort through the minutia that's there that would make the rest of us go bonkers, right? Including a Gemini who just doesn't have time for that, frankly.
I once heard an analogy that if you think about a garden, so the bee, the busy bee going from flower to flower to flower to flower, that's the Gemini Mercury.
Mhm.
But then if you're going to really work on giving this one plant some love and really growing it and tending to it and making sure it thrives, that's the Virgo Mercury.
Mhm.
Really going real on deep on into the details there with that.
One of the things that I love too about the Gemini Virgo differences in that Mercury experience is that with Gemini as an air sign, there is that being kind of connected to the thoughts, to the mind. And Holly, as you said, there's that curiosity. I think of them like the investigative reporter. They're the 3-year-old, the but why, the curious questioner. And I feel like the Virgo who embodies the energy with that earth element, they can take, like you said, they sift through all of the information. They take the data that has been collected and they actually make something of it.
Mm.
A couple of ways that I heard it described, like every zodiac sign is connected to one of the elements, and we've spoken about that before. But the 3 that are connected to the earth element, the Capricorns, the Taurus, and the Virgo, I love the idea of the Capricorns as a visionary. They're the cardinal energy, the ones that start the season, like the CEO. They're the ones that are big picture thinkers, big picture. And then the Taurus energy, they're the ones who fund the projects and chart, okay, let's come up with the money and the resources to build it. And then the Virgos, they're the ones who are analytical and detail oriented, like you guys were saying, Holly, where they have the patience to see the project through, bring it to completion, and actually into physical manifested form. So that's another way that I look at that mercurial difference between Gemini and Virgo.
And to sift through, so that Virgo, in context that you just gave, Irina, that Virgo is going to sift through everything that's come up through the Capricorn and the Taurus, and they're going to find the things that don't really fit or aren't necessary, that are superfluous, and they will hone it down to exactly what's needed.
And I think
So
that's
cool.
why we find them as healthcare providers. I don't know if you all have observed this, but I am very comfortable asking my healthcare providers, when's your birthday? And if they ask why, I tell them I'm an astrologer. And I find a lot of healthcare providers are Virgo. And when you think about that, when facing any sort of a medical situation, you've been trained and educated, Lori knows this, in some way on all of it.
Mhm.
But what you have to do in a moment when you're giving care to someone is to really zero in of that information, what matters and is actionable.
Good description.
That is so true. All right. Anything else on Virgo, generally speaking? Go ahead, Irina.
Something that I want to jump in. This is an interesting concept that I came across recently from another astrologer, where she was talking about how when you have the houses essentially squaring each other, so it's a zodiac sign. So you've got your Gemini energy, which is really connected with the third house on the natural wheel. And then you have your Virgo energy connected with the sixth house. And they're both signs that are mutable. They transition from the season. So on the natural wheel, they're squaring each other as mutable signs would do. And it makes it a challenge or an obstacle as well. And I think about that when we also approach that Gemini mindset versus the Virgo mindset. It's almost like the obstacle that comes between them, that little bit of conflict of what's in the way is the way. And it makes for an interesting conversation, especially when you get Geminis and Virgos together, the way that they
Oh,
process
yes.
out is fascinating. Very fascinating. I have real life examples of that in my world, watching them go. And it's a wonderful thing because the Geminis will talk it out and the Virgos, they're taking it all in and you can see their mind at work, but very different.
So let's go into our first example of Virgo energy in real life. So I'm going to share, we're going to do a Virgo rising first. What does a Virgo look like? What kind of a first impression does a Virgo give off? And my brother is a Virgo rising. And it's funny because there's certain things that you all said here just now that just made me think of certain attributes that I see in my brother that I hadn't really thought of before, but that totally fit. For example, he is very gentle. He's very quiet. I always just assumed growing up it's because I was so loud and so there wasn't enough room for two of me. But he is very quiet. My mom would always say, to your point, Irina, with the Gemini versus the Virgo, my mom would always say, oh gosh, if Elisa's upset about anything, she's going to talk. We got to talk it out. Whereas Greg, on the other hand, would think things through on his own. He would have a solution all figured out before he even shares it with anybody. And this is what my mom would tell me, especially as I first started having my own children. And she's, oh, your children will be so different. You just watch, you'll see. And she would go into that story. And it's funny, I never really thought about it until just now, but it's his Virgo analytical mind that is just processing whatever he needs to process on his own before he brings it out. Because by the time he is ready to bring it out, he's already thought of every single scenario because that's who he is. But another thing that is a very common trait on a Virgo rising is they are very tidy. They like to keep
Yes.
themselves clean. Oh, he's got a beard that he keeps trimmed very, very nicely. And it's funny, he's just got the overall look of a Virgo. And he does notice all kinds of things. You go to his house, and he's actually marrying a woman who has a Virgo moon. Their house is very clean and tidy and everything in its place. And it's funny, I actually have a really funny story. There was one day we were actually all together at a wedding. My cousin got married a couple years ago, and we were getting ready to go to one of the events leading up to the wedding. And we were all just gathering in the hotel, getting ready to go. And Greg just leaned over. He noticed a hair in my face, and he literally reached over and just plucked it out. And his fiance, it was his girlfriend at the time, she just looked at him like mortified. I can't believe you just did that. And I personally had been like going at this hair for a few days, like the tweezers wasn't working. I was like really annoyed. So when Greg did that, I was like, oh, thank you. And poor Michelle is like, what did you just do? But that's a Virgo, and that's also very comfortable between siblings. Oh, I see that hair. He wouldn't do that to just anyone. But to me, absolutely, he picked a hair out of my face that he saw that shouldn't have been there, and it shouldn't have been there. So it's really funny. And he is so smart, and he has a very important job. He also has worked at startup companies, building things from the ground floor. So whereas I was always Miss Corporate America and work for big companies where there's an IT department and there's a legal department and there's all these departments for things, Greg was figuring out all of the things for his small business, and he's done it really well. But that is Virgo rising. That's Virgo energy. Anything else to add on Virgo risings?
I'm glad you brought up tidy, because that's a big thing.
Big.
Mhm. Yeah. Is he neurotically tidy? Because I
No.
know neurotically tidy Virgos.
Yeah, he could be. I don't know. I'll ask his fiance and we'll get back to you on that. She'll really know. He definitely is the most, out of my family of origin, mom, dad, me, and Greg, he is absolutely the most tidy, organized person of us all, for sure.
Something I want to add to that I think also lends itself towards that tidiness is the organization. And you really hit upon something that I see so strongly in my son, who's a Virgo, which is that ability to come up with a solution. Like I think of them Virgos sometimes as fixers. So there is this well thought out process. It's like the Boy Scouts, always be prepared. And what I noticed in Virgos is that they have thought through all the different scenarios, like you said, Elisa. So therefore, they are prepared for these different situations that might arise, and they can often come to the rescue and help others because they are prepared and ready. They have thought through the solutions. So very fascinating to hear you say that and describe your brother.
Yeah, and he is always very willing to help. He will set aside whatever he's doing to help any kind of a friend with any situation, anything anybody needs. So talk about that Virgo being in service to others and that helpful piece. He definitely is. And he's also very outdoorsy. He is all earth. His big three, he is a Capricorn sun, a Taurus moon, and a Virgo rising. He truly is outdoors as much as they get, but he's a tidy outdoors. So he's great. I love Greg. I know he's a real good sport for letting me talk about him on here. Do you want to talk about some Virgo suns in your life? Irina, you just mentioned your son, who is a Virgo sun. Do you want to talk about how that shows up in the sun sign versus the rising sign?
Yeah, so it is very interesting because the sun sign, our identity, we are growing into that. I do believe that. And when we're young, we behave more like our moon. So it has been interesting watching my son as he's growing up. He'll be 24 in a few days. So it's a very exciting time. And he has a Pisces moon and Pisces rising, which makes it very interesting with his Virgo sun. But the way that his Virgo sun shows up, I'll share a story from childhood. Like when you're a kid and you really want mom and dad to buy you something and it's Christmas time and you come up with all sorts of, oh, I'll be really good, or mom, I really want this or the other. The way that my son would approach this was ingenious. He would actually put together like a slide deck, a pitch deck, and he would analyze like all the reasons like for it. He would lay it out. He put together the system of, he literally built his computer from scratch. He set up his like office in his room at 12 years old. It looked like the Starship Enterprise and he piecemealed it all together. But he would draw like the outline, the sketch of the room where everything would go. Here's why this would be good, mom and dad. And he'd give a little slide deck presentation. And we're not just talking like, oh, a couple little handwritten notes. Like he would literally get up there and he'd put it on the TV, he'd find a way to connect like his little laptop and go through the slides. It was amazing. So like he had already explored all the different angles and come up with a solution. He's often considered the dad of the group, his friend group. He's always prepared. So he and you talk about being outdoorsy. It's awesome. He and his girlfriend, they did a cross-country trip last summer and they hit as many national parks as they could. And he had everything. He had a fire extinguisher in the car. He had the bear sprayer, the bear sound, scare away the bears. He had like tire inflator thing. He made a little platform. He did this research for the back of his, because he graduated from college and he got an Outback. He got a station rather than a fast, hot, fancy car with his new fancy job. He's like, no, I can camp in this. So there's also physicality to it and a down to earthiness that they bring in as well. So he's thinking in that viewpoint and terms. So it's fun to watch. So when they were camping, somebody had left they did a lot of car camping, and another person at one of the sites left the trunk open, like many people do, and their battery died because they didn't think, oh, make sure you can turn off the light in the car so the battery doesn't die. But Chase had a special battery pack with him as well, so he could give them a jump start, because you're in the middle of nowhere. There's no service, like you're backcountry. So, and again, there's that of being of service and that gentleness and that kindness and sweetness. And he actually just switched jobs. And I feel, this is personal Mama Bear's viewpoint on it, but I feel like a big piece of it is that the job that he switched to, it was a company he interned for, and they're making a real difference in people's lives, one that's tangible, giving them hope when they had reached a dead end. And it's within the medical field. So I find that it also lines up with the Virgo Pisces energy. But it's amazing to have Virgos in your life, because they do help you come to solutions and help you figure out how to fix problems. And they're willing to stick through all of the minutia and the details, like you mentioned, Holly, that a lot of us are just like, oh my God, like I'm done. So it's a wonderful thing to have Virgos in our lives.
That's so funny you said that about, I didn't think about that, about the type of profession that a Virgo might choose, and how your son left one job for another because potentially of the impact on other people. And my brother, the Virgo rising, is in health benefits. And I never really thought about it, but his company provides health benefits. So I never thought about that.
It's cool.
How about you, Holly? I think you've got some Virgo people.
Yeah, I do have a couple. My stepmom's a Virgo, but I'm not going to talk about her because she's very fire dominant. So she doesn't always express in all the clear ways. But my brother is a Virgo in Capricorn moon. So again, very earthy. There's a few words I don't think I've heard us say yet. So these really apply to my brother. He's very practical. At the end of the day, he's thinking through the usefulness of all the things in his life around him, right? And as part of that, I also find that he is very not only resourceful, but he is conservative when it comes to using those resources. And because of that, he can live on a little, right? If he's got plants and a cat, which he doesn't have now, but he's had most of his life. I don't know. All the Virgos I know are cat people. So somebody chime in here and tell me if this is just my anecdotal observation.
Maybe animal people, because Greg loves
Yeah.
dogs, but
Yeah.
animals for sure. Gotta have
Yeah.
animals.
Absolutely loves animals. He can live very meagerly, doesn't necessarily expect everybody else to live that way around him. He has a teenage daughter and understands that's not really, frankly, practical for her. So here's the story I like to share about my brother. So he got his associate's degree, I want to say in applied mathematics. So very cerebral. He took welding and he fell in love with welding. Tangible thing he could touch, literally building things that had a defined use, had been specced out, and would be used to make something work, come together, run. And it could be any number of things. Absolutely fell in love with it as a professional welder, and has done more than that relative to understanding design and all the things that go into it, but really loves it. And a lot of the things have been said. I do find his nature gentle and beyond thoughtful. And I think sometimes, like you said, Lori, I see some anxiety appear. It's not just with him, but all the Virgos I know. And I almost read it as they're processing through. There's so much to do. There's so much happening. The fixer thing came up, right? So oftentimes what's handed to them is not in an ideal state. And so their role becomes transforming it into something more useful and practical. And knowing that they're always on the receiving end of that, right, can't be easy. And the same applies to one of the best program managers I ever had work for me, where people would talk for hours and she would just sit with her pen and oftentimes not write down anything. She heard something really useful, but she would be the one who would come out of it and poke holes in the ideas of the conversation and help us sift through what was really important. And so, to the earlier point around perfectionism, the pursuit of perfection isn't a bad thing, particularly in a work product or something you're designing or creating or a product you're delivering for someone. To have egos, and not everybody likes to have their ideas have holes poked in it. But I surround myself by Virgos because I have no Virgo energy. And they've been crucial in my career in getting in that detail and helping me see the way. Like Irina said, what's in the way is the way. Virgos have played at work that role for me for sure.
Cool. Well, so should we transition to a Virgo moon? Because Virgo moons are also similar yet different. Lori, you have a Virgo moon. Tell us about how Virgo shows up with your emotional world.
Oh gosh. So I have so much to say about this.
Spoken like a true Virgo.
Yeah, literally. And Holly, to your point that the Virgo anxiety is likely tied to all of the things happening in their minds, 100%. Because I'm generally not an anxious person. When I feel anxiety, it's because there's too much happening. Or this weekend, I was at a birthday party and it was too loud and crowded in the room. And I was feeling like this. When I travel, before I actually leave town, the process of getting everything together, I feel extreme anxiety. And I love to travel. It's not the travel, it's the I have to make sure every detail is ticked and tied before I go. I have to have the pet's needs met. Do I have a house sitter? Does the house sitter have their instructions? Have I packed exactly the right thing? What time am I getting on the plane? Where am I parking? Like I'm literally thinking about every detail for 24 hours before I leave. Even once a detail is resolved, the item of clothing is packed, it is still in my mind. And so that anxiety just, it sits there and hums literally until I get on the plane. Once I'm on the plane, okay, I forgot something, I'll go to Target.
I'm smiling right now because I'm laughing thinking about when we went to that conference in Orlando in March. And Holly obviously came on her own because she lives far away from us. But Lori and Irina and Katie and I all traveled together. And I think it was you, Lori, who was texting me like, where are you? Are you here? Are you almost here?
Yes.
Because I sailed in at the last minute in true Aries fashion. You know, everybody else was sitting at the gate and had been there for a while. And I had it timed. I didn't leave my house until I absolutely had
The
to.
last
And I got
second.
there and I'm strolling in and Lori's, oh, you made it. And I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
I made it. I'm good.
And I would rather get there an hour and a half or 2 hours early and chill in the airport because anxiety does start to come down once I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, you know, what's done is done. I'm ready. But when somebody I'm traveling with is running behind, I'm anxious.
See, and that was the first time that we ever traveled together. Now I know, and I will try to be a little earlier.
Or I'll just remember you're okay because you're flying by the seat of your pants.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah. So a little bit about a Virgo moon child. And I know we've talked about this before in another episode, but it's worthwhile to reiterate. Virgo moon children are exceptionally shy, introverted. I hid behind my dad's legs. We talked about this before. Every Saturday, we would make the rounds to his friends' pharmacies. He was a pharmacist, and he would visit all of his friends from college. And I went with him every Saturday, and every Saturday I hid behind his legs. And I really did not come out of that shell of shyness until I started working as a waitress when I was 16. And even then it took a while. And once I figured out how to communicate with people in a way that I didn't feel like I was revealing myself too much because I am private, then I felt comfortable coming out of that shell in a way that felt safe to me. And so now I would say I'm probably, what's the word I use for it? An ambivert. So I'm naturally introverted, but I can moonlight as an extrovert when I need to. And some of my friends say, you're not an introvert. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I have to have that downtime where it's just for me. And I'm exhausted by large groups. Another thing in my childhood that I think is very indicative of Virgo, our very first, I think it was probably fourth grade, maybe fifth grade. It was our first research paper that we ever had to do. And we had very clear instructions. You have to use so many resources and you have to cite those resources and it has to be so many pages long. my Virgo was elated. I'd never experienced a project like this. And I was so into it. I can still remember the feeling that I had color coding my little index cards, because this is long before the internet. I color coded the index cards for each book that I was referencing. And then there were additional color codes for the subjects that would relate to certain paragraphs within this essay. It was structured to the nines. And the feeling that it gave me of accomplishment and satisfaction is indescribable. And that is the moon Virgo. It's how you feel. It's your happy place. And I am truly happiest when I can dive into something, pick it apart, try to figure it out, and then say, okay, we had this big ball of wax to start, but now we're here, and these are the only things that matter. And big surprise, in my corporate life, I'm a nurse. I'm Pisces Sun, Virgo Moon. So I'm a nurse, but I'm also a data analyst. So I no longer work providing direct clinical care. I do data analytics in healthcare. And I'm literally working with massive amounts of data and extrapolating it and determining what are the important things we need to study and what does this tell us? So creating a story from that data. And Holly, earlier you mentioned SQL coding, and I've had to learn SQL coding in this role, which was not something I ever anticipated I would do, but I'm learning it and I actually enjoy it. It's a little weird, but for Virgo, getting down and dirty in the details and then pulling out what really matters. Another really good example of this is in a previous job, I was the go-to anytime something needed to be edited. And they came up with a new word for editing because I'm Virgo, I'm a little harsh, I'm a little critical. And a lot of people are verbose. They put too much in there. And when you're writing professional communication, you need to cut out the waste. It needs to be straight and to the point, especially when it's for an executive. People would bring their stuff to me to edit. And sometimes if they really didn't want the harsh criticism, they would say, do not give me full glorification. I only want partial glorification. The Virgo editors they're going to tear it apart, but the product at the end will be exceptional.
And Virgos can go deeper, like when other people's brains stop. A friend of mine at work, there's certain things, I get to a point where I'm very much more big picture, right? And I have no Virgo in my chart, none at all. Like our brains together, I can do things with her that I cannot do by myself. And that's magic. So if you don't have much Virgo, find yourself a Virgo, because Virgos are great.
And if you have too much Virgo, you need somebody to pull you out of the weeds.
Oh, yeah.
Because I did have a boss once tell me, Lori, you need to learn to discern when C work is acceptable over A+ work. You don't have to give A+ every single time. And that was very difficult advice, but some of the best advice I ever got. Because Virgos are always going to go A+.
There's that perfectionism, and then there's that anxiety and all of that. So yeah, you're right. One other thing that I thought of as we were talking through Virgo, and I actually thought of this about my stepdaughter, because she has a Virgo sun and a Virgo moon. And she's actually the one a week or two ago, whenever we did the chart expression, she's the one that expressed Sagittarius, but she's a Leo rising and a double Virgo. And throughout a lot of her life, even though she expresses Sag, she does a lot of what I would say is really Virgo specific things. Like she really loves handmade gifts. She also has done a lot of gardening. She's actually done farming. She worked as a farmer for a little while, growing herbs and plants. And she's done all of these things that she's also been a professional organizer. Now she works as a librarian, a Mercury ruled profession, information, not just the reading bit, organizing where everything goes and having everything in its place and the shelves and everything. It's really interesting. And to be a Virgo sun and a moon, Lots of times the moon sign is where you've come from, what you've brought in with you, and the sun sign is where you're growing to. And so it's really interesting, really, for anybody who has the same sign in their sun and their moon. It's almost, okay, you've done Virgo before, or whatever sign it is, but we're talking about Virgo. But this time you're going to do Virgo differently.
Or perfect it, right?
Or
In the case of
perfect it.
Virgo.
Yeah. That's probably most like it. Perfect the Virgo this time around, right?
That is a dangerous thing to ask. Hey, Virgo, you
Mhm.
need to perfect your Virgo. Talk about causing anxiety.
The good thing she expresses Sagittarius. She just kind of goes with the flow, right? So funny. So one other thing that is a very interesting thing for me right now, because I don't have any Virgo in my chart, and my progressed moon right now is in Virgo. So that's interesting. We haven't really talked much about a progressed chart, period, or progressed planets. But when you progress your chart, your natal chart is the chart of your lifetime potential. But then you actually live your chart throughout your life as your soul is ready to take on new challenges. And when you progress the chart, we usually do what we call a secondary progression. There's lots of different ways that you can progress it, but when you do a secondary progression, you move the sun 1 degree per year, and then all the other planets move at their natural speed. So the moon zips around every 28 years. It's the only planet, quote unquote, that will go all the way around the wheel. And so throughout the course of your lifetime, your progressed moon will take on a different flare. And so it's really interesting. Your moon sign is always what it is. Any of your planets, your natal planets are always what they are. But wherever your progressed planets go, gives you like a little taste of what it's like to be that planet in that sign. And the moon in particular gets a lot of focus because the moon spends about 2.5 years in a progressed sign and typically in a progressed house. So right now, the Virgo in my chart is in the 9th house, which is beliefs. It's, Holly said last week, it's the broadcasting. It's also where my Jupiter and my Saturn and my Pluto are. And so my Saturn work. And it's just funny because it was last September is when my progressed moon went into Virgo. And it was around that time that I started to get really serious and building out my plan of what was I going to do to really be a big girl astrologer out in the world. And it's a lot of work to really detail the plan and put together all the materials and build the website and come up with the communications plan and all the things. And I wasn't ready to do any of that work until my moon went into Virgo and highlighted the area of my chart that was ready for that. And it's just really interesting because I still have another 1.5 years to go and I'm on track, I think. I'm on pace, but I am probably maybe a little harder on myself than I sometimes am, especially relative to all of this. Another thing I've noticed about my progressed moon in Virgo is that I mention a lot that I work out at this same gym every morning. And I will tell you, in the last year, I have really noticed like little specks of dirt on the carpet, like when we're getting down to do burpees or push-ups or whatever. I've literally actually said something a few times like, hey, when are you guys going to vacuum? My face is down here. Never in a million years before that would think of that. But it's funny. I notice stuff like that is coming up for me. It's just funny.
So, Lisa, your natal moon is Leo, is that right?
Capricorn.
Capricorn is your natal. Okay. The reason I asked that question is, yeah, as we were talking, I have great empathy for Virgos because this is a chaotic, messy world we live in. And I can't imagine what it feels like to be surrounded by that with the, sort of core desire to fix things and clean them up and make them when they're most perfect order. It's interesting that you've been able to do, as you talk about this pivot into this role, so much detailed technological stuff. So
Oh
when
my
I
God,
think
yeah.
about meeting you 4 years ago, right, or whatever it was, you were very open about the fact that you don't want to get into details. You don't like the
Mm-mm.
details. Somebody else needs to handle the details. You're ready to go, to execute, to close deals, to make it happen, right? And
Yep.
so, because I know what goes on backstage, if you will, with all this production, both in your podcast and in what we're doing here, I think it's really serving you well.
It's absolutely insane how
Yeah.
much goes into every single thing that I figure out. Then there's like 5 things that I'm like, but now what? And truly, you're right. And I am very, very Aries impatient. And I mean, it is bonkers. I actually was reflecting over the weekend. I seriously can't believe I'm actually doing all this stuff because it is not who I am 100%, but it just shows you with this stuff. Holy moly. Yeah, it's this Virgo progressed moon that is helping me push through and figure out all of these things so that then when it goes into Libra and I'm ready to just be with people, then it'll all be done. Processes will be in place. But I'm doing so much process building right now that I've always been a planner. I mean, I have a Capricorn moon and a Capricorn rising. I've always been a planner, but this is like a whole new level of process planning and detail and all of the things that have to be a go. And I was even, just before we got on here, I didn't like the way I was so bright in the last video, and I'm playing around with the video and I'm Googling and online, like, what do I do with the Anchor Work webcam? Like, I had to look at it, like, what is this thing? And what's the troubleshooting over this? And you ask anybody in my life, I don't troubleshoot anything. Like, that is not who I am. I'm like, Kevin, I need help. Or I call Greg, like, Greg, Kevin won't do this anymore. I'm really annoying him. Like, help me out. Like, I'm not the one that does this, but I've been doing it. It's so weird. But it's the Virgo progressed moon. You're right. So
That's a
funny.
great observation, Holly. Well said.
And that's one of the things I love about progressed moons. The moon in general helps us with daily timing and rhythm and how to lean into it, how to harness that energy. And when you have foreknowledge of what's coming, then you can really be a lot more strategic in how you access that energy. So with your background, Elisa, you're able to look back and not beat yourself up in the past of saying, oh my gosh, I wasn't a detail person. I couldn't do it, or I didn't have the energy or the wherewithal or the fortitude to deal with the minutia and troubleshoot 4 years ago. But now, as that progressive moon has moved into the Virgo energy, you're leaning into it and you have a time frame. You know that you've got about 2.5 years where you've got that moon in Virgo where you can harness that energy to its fullest potential and not miss this opportunity. Whether we know where a progressed moon is or not, we'll naturally lend ourselves to that energy. Like right now, mine's in Taurus. And so for me, it's a lot about, okay, make sure your resources are in order, do the things that you really value, and where your treasure is, there your heart will be. So it switched from the Aries, which was this gung-ho energy. And it was funny because we were laughing about this. Elisa, you pointed out when I was so frustrated, I'm like, I can't get anywhere. I'm trying all these things and it's just not happening. As my progressed moon was void of course. I wasn't going to be doing anything. No matter how hard I worked, it wasn't going to happen. So again, having a gifted astrologer by your side, they can help give you insight to say, hey, listen, the energy is going to change around this time and you're going to be able to access it. So don't beat yourself up now. Lean into the strengths that you have now, and then things will shift and change. There's a timing factor. And that's one of the things that I really appreciated about astrology is that when that inner critic comes up, we have the astrology to lean into and say, oh, okay, I don't have to beat myself up. It's not the time yet.
Yeah. And it's funny. There's one other thing that I can't believe none of us have brought up yet. We've talked about tidiness and all sorts of things, but Virgo is the cleaner. We talked about this the other day, like when we were going into a Virgo moon and Irina was talking about how her family knows, watch out, when the moon goes into Virgo, mom's going to make all of us clean. And I will tell you, with my progressed moon in Virgo, I have been cleaning out closets. I have been cleaning out things. Literally today, over the weekend, I was cleaning out old bedding. Like, who tackles bedding out of nowhere? Like, I had old comforters I had a little like digger comforter from when Will was little, and 3 or 4 different rainbow comforters from Lily. And it's just funny. I took all that stuff to Goodwill today, and it's just purge, clean, tidy, organize. It's also very big with Virgo. And probably because they're trying to be efficient and get down to the bottom line of what do we need. for survival because the practicality. So cool. Anything else? I mean, we've talked a lot of Virgo. Any other closing thoughts?
I'll just say that the placement of the Virgo is important too. I do know a Virgo sun who the sun is in the 5th house. Virgos tend to be shy, and this person is quite gregarious. And I never had thought about it before because I looked at their chart. The first time I looked at their chart was long before I was actually doing astrology. So it never occurred to me why they might be gregarious, but it's in the 5th house, you know, the house of Leo. And yeah, they're just very outgoing. So placement of the sign matters. It's going to express differently in different places.
I would never have thought of gregarious as a word to describe Virgo.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. And they're a Virgo stellium.
Oh, wow. But that's a lot of 5th house energy. So
Yeah, I think we should close with a call to action to go appreciate all your Virgo friends and family members and coworkers and realize that their feedback, like Lori talked about, isn't personal ever. It's always about what makes the most logical, practical sense for the situation or the thing that they're working on or looking at. And they're so practical that without the rest of the world processing things on that level, people take it personally. But Virgos keep it together.
We need our Virgos. We need our Virgos. We love our Virgos. Thank you, Virgos. We love you. Oh my gosh. If you know a Virgo and you have a good story that you can share, drop it in the comments. We would love to hear more good, wonderful stories or funny stories or anything you'd like to comment. We would always appreciate hearing from you. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, take care. Bye.